Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Kena. I'm so excited to welcome you tonight on Investing. So, if you are live and here, please introduce yourself in the chat box. Either you're on Facebook or you are watching on YouTube. Let me know you are here tonight. Let me know you are with me tonight. So drop your name and where you are watching from in the comment section. Tonight is going to be a very awesome night. Welcome back to Peaceful Investing August edition. August edition. This edition is a special one, and we are going to be talking about something very important, something that is very touchy and very private to a lot of us. But then uh, being private is what it has been the strength of debt. Not being able to seek advice, not being able to tell people what you are going through, not being able to get the right counsel concerning debt. If this is your first time of joining Peaceful Investing, these are the rules. These are the way. These are the rules for peaceful investing. It's meant to be 45 minutes to 1 hour discussion, and then I'm going to speak for 30 minutes straight, and then I'm going to answer questions for the next 15-30 minutes. So whatever I'm able to say in the first 30 minutes, then the rest will be questions. Because I strongly believe even if I have 2 hours, I might not be able to exhaust all I plan and I intend to say. But then, how my knowledge and experience and what I have to share tonight will be more useful to everyone watching and to you in particular will be more of how much of your questions I can answer and how much we can adapt what I'm discussing tonight to your own case or how it applies to you. So if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you can see me clearly, please drop a message for me in the chat box. Let's connect. So that said, this is 8:09 already. I'm just going to start with the conversation tonight. So tonight we are going to be talking about. Hi, David. Thank you for joining. Welcome. So we are going to be talking about debt. We said the good, the bad, the ugly. So there's so much to discuss around debt, but then I've been able to aggregate all my thoughts into just 10 thoughts. Hopefully, I'll be able to exhaust the 10 before the first 30 minutes of this conversation is exhausted, before we run out of time. But then like I love to say, it is not much of what I have to say. It is more of questions you have to ask so that I can answer to the best of my ability. And then other people on the call tonight can also share their perspective. Because the topic tonight is not just a topic that anyone can exert expertise on, because people have different experiences. We have different 1,001 scenarios, so we can make this as interesting and interactive as possible. So that said, the first thing I want to talk about tonight, or let me just say, if you are looking for a topic tonight, let's call it 10 insights on debt, or 10 thought provoking insights on debt. The first one I want to talk about tonight is this. Most people, debt is not evil, it's a tool. Think of debt as fire. Think of debt as fire. Fire can burn down your house. Fire can burn down a house, not your house, but then can also make the best of meal. So think of debt too. So debt is not evil. Let's start with that. Debt is not evil. Debt is a tool. So I do not have so much time to dwell much on that. Most people fear debt because they have only seen people misuse it. You have only seen people misuse, debt. But then when you manage debt wisely, debt can accelerate growth, can open doors that can only be on that, cash alone can unlock. So debt is not evil. It's a tool. It's a tool for expansion. It's a tool for, for making things better. It's a tool for growth. So most people fear debt because they have only seen it misused. But when managed wisely, debt can accelerate growth and open doors that cash alone can't unlock. So equity and debt is what businesses are built on. So let's continue. The next one I'm going to quickly speak on is good debt pays you back, bad debt pays someone else. Whichever way, debt is going to pay somebody. So if it is good debt that you got yourself into, it's going to pay you back by by return on investment, return on asset, expansion of businesses and all of that. But that bad debt is going to pay somebody else. It's going to pay another person, which is your lender. So using debt to acquire asset that generates income or appreciates in value is good debt. So we need to differentiate between good and bad debt. But using it to fund consumption, e.g., gadgets, parties, and all of that, turns you into a lifetime customer of your creditors. So I believe that is, clear and self-explanatory. So the third point tonight is leverage multiplies both gain and pain. Now, we need to establish the fact that debt is a leverage. Debt is a leverage, and leverage, as it will, multiply both gain and pain. So debt is able to multiply your gain, leverage is able to multiply your gain or your pain. So debt is a financial leverage, is a tool of financial leverage. And like all leverage that we have, it amplifies outcomes. So if your decision is wise, that is, you get into a good debt, it is going to amplify your gain. But if your decision is bad, that is, you get into a bad debt, it is also going to amplify your pain. So if your decision is wise, debt can multiply wealth. If your decision is poor, it can crush you. So the determining factor is either you are getting into a good debt or a bad one. So the next one is you can borrow from the future to buy the present cheap. It's another form of debt. If the present is cheap, you can borrow from the future to buy the present. The same way that also can go wrong very quickly, but we are going to get to that. You can borrow from the future and buy the present if it is cheap. So this is a form of time arbitrage. It's a form of leverage. Smart investors sometimes use debt to acquire undervalued assets today. Some of the farmlands and land banking projects, people are getting into today, not all of them are being acquired with cash. A good number are being done on debt. But then, if you are able to get that, let's say you got the money for maybe 20%, and then you are able to pay it off in the next 5, 10 years. I mean, it's going to pay you back abundantly, much more than the cost of the capital and even the capital itself. So, smart investors sometimes use debt to acquire undervalued assets today, knowing they would be more expensive in the future, but it requires certainty of future cash flow. That's one around around this point. It requires certainty of cash flow. You cannot just go ahead and then use debt to buy the future, use the borrow from the future to buy the present without the assurance of future cash flow. You do not take, such risk until you are sure that there is something, valuable in the future. That what you are buying today, what you are borrowing from the future, because almost every time you get into debt, you are borrowing from the future. You are taking the future to the present. So whatever you use the future to do at the moment, we tell what is going to happen next. If you take the future, borrow from the future to buy an undervalued asset, you are sure to gain, reward on equity, reward on assets, return on investment. But if you borrow from the future, to buy a liability or to waste the money, you are going to be a slave to the lender for the foreseeable length of years. Let's go to the fifth one quickly. The fifth point here is avoiding all debt can be as dangerous as taking too much. There's a divide of the line that some people are on one side of the divide, which is to avoid all debt. They don't want to get into any debt. They want to fund everything by cash. They don't want to get into any debt. In short, it is not also wisdom. It is not also the best thing to do, because it can be as dangerous as taking too much of it. Because there's another divide to this, and the other divide is taking too much of debt, such that you are now more debt funded than equity funded, and which is not totally bad if you know what you are doing. But then on the surface, avoiding all debts, good or bad, can be as dangerous as taking too much of it as well. So fear of debt has kept many people from scaling businesses, buying homes early, or investing in education. Being too conservative can keep you stagnant as well. So debt is not about avoidance or something. It's about the wisdom, to get a good debt and maximize it when you have one. So the next one, which is point number 6 here, would be that not all zero debt people are financially healthy. We are quick to pride ourselves around, I have no debt, I owe no man owes me, and all of that. It is not all zero debt people that are financially wealthy. At this point, let me quickly tell a simple story. There's this story it's a true life story that I heard somewhere, of a 82-year-old man in Nigeria that was celebrating his birthday. And then, in that birthday, his children were there, but then his first son, which is also the heir to his empire, was also there, more like his PA, trying to help him sort few things out. But then the young man noticed that there were a lot of bank MDs around, unusually in that party. And then the man asked his son and said, do you know why we have all of these MDs in this party today? Said, yeah, I know, they love you. You do business with them. You make a lot of money for them. You've built your network with them over the years and all of that. He said, yes. But then that is not just the reason. The major reason they are in this party tonight, or they are in this celebration with me, is because I am owing them so much money, and they want to be sure I'm not about to die. So I've said that to say that, you know, having debt and being able to use it productively, it is not a bad idea. And then early enough, we've spoken about good debt, bad debt, you know. But then totally avoiding debt, regardless of how good, or either good or bad, is not also financially healthy. It's not also wisdom. We can throw out scenarios in all of these conversations. We can throw out scenarios because if we bring Nigeria in context, in the last few years, if you had borrowed some cash, at 20%, at 15%, at 13%, whatever percentage, and then you've bought land, you've bought, even if it is a car you bought, as much as we do not consider car an asset, except it's a means of business, even if it was a car you bought with that money 3 years ago and you paid it for 2 years. Now, today, if you are planning to sell that car, I am sure you will still sell it more than your purchasing price, because of inflation, because of what has happened in the last few years. So we are saying that. So I'm not saying you should go and borrow money to go and buy a car. Get me straight. Get me clearly. I'm saying that not having any debt, as we pride, as a good number of us pride ourselves, can also be a sign of, is not a pointer to you being financially healthy as well. So not being in debt totally, or saying I'm zero debt, I don't have any debt, does not simplify or confirm that you are also financially wealthy, because it also might mean that you are not using and maximizing the leverage available to you. Remember, we've established in the beginning that debt is a form of leverage, and then, like every other leverage, it will always increase and maximize, and then it will always amplify the outcome. So if you use good debt well, your gain will be amplified, your wealth will be amplified. But if you get yourself into a bad debt, your pain will be amplified. It might crush you. Like I said when I was starting, debt is like fire. It can burn down an apartment, a whole building, but then it can also cook the best of meal. So let's continue. The point number 7 tonight would be: consumer debt is marketed as lifestyle, not a trap. Most of the debts that keep shackles in people's neck and hand and make them slave for the next foreseeable years are not marketed as trap or loans. They are marketed as lifestyle. And that's why, you see a lot of people today, any small thing, they've logged into a hub, they've, secure a high interest the loan, from different organization, to fund what? To fund a lifestyle, to fund a get together, to fund whatever it is that you are funding with it. You can determine if what you are doing is a good debt, or you are taking is a good debt or a bad debt. Banks and brand glamorize debts to sell you a lifestyle you haven't earned. So there's a way to live. You have to earn a lifestyle before you can, live it. But then we've been marketed, financial institutions have come to market to you that you deserve to be taken care of, even when you have not earned that level of lifestyle. I agree that everyone deserves to be taken care of, but you can do that at your level. At some people's level, stay at home and watch Netflix or watch YouTube or whatever it is you can watch. For some people's your own get together is to go to a recreational center within your town, not taking flight and going to Paris or going to somewhere else. So we need to understand that lifestyle is first earned before live. So banks and brand glamorize debt to sell you a lifestyle you haven't earned. The easy monthly installment culture, makes it feel normal until you are stuck paying last year lifestyle today. For many people, they are still paying loan that they got into for the life they lived last year. Some people are still paying loan for 30 December to date, and I'm not exaggerating. Some people 3 years into marriage, they are still paying wedding debts. And then, not to mock people, some people have divorced and yet they are still paying debt on the wedding. So lifestyle is first earned before you live it. Everyone deserves to be taken care of, I understand. You need to enjoy your weekend, I understand, but do it at your level. So the next one would be number 8. Business credit is a cheat code rich people use. The wealthy rarely spend their own money. They use other people's money, OPM, other people's resources, OPR, other people's assets, OPA, to fund assets, then repay the debt using return from those assets. In fact, there's a book on that alone. Other people's money is a book. You can just check it out. Other people's money is a book on its own. It's a book on leveraging on debt and loan to fund and to maximize businesses and assets. That's how empires are built, you know. But then there's a wisdom to it. And then I don't want to get into deeply into it. I have 4 minutes to the end of my session before I take questions. So I don't want to get deeply into it. But then let me just say this in passing. In the last few months, we've seen more commercial papers. Commercial papers is corporate organization with solid, solid cash flow, asking the public to borrow them money. That's the simplest way. So why do you think Dangote want to borrow money from you when you can borrow money from the bank? Because the cost of credit in bank is higher. Interest rate is currently 27% thereabout. Bank is going to give him that rate or higher. But then he can borrow from you cheaper. And that's why, we have more commercial papers, now this year alone than the last few years. It's so business credit is a cheat code that rich people use. So point number nine is your debt is someone else's asset. You need to understand this. Your debt is someone else's assets. So if you over leverage your life such that 90% of your monthly income is going into debt, it means every month you dress up, you wake up, you go through the hold up, you work hard to go and work for somebody else. So if you are going to take such risk, then it must be really worth it. So let me repeat that. Your debt is someone else's assets. You are a source of income for somebody. So if you are going to take that debt, borrow that money, keep that at the back of your mind, and then let that inform your decision. Is it going to be worth it that I'm going to spend the next 3 months of my life going to work, dressing up, working hard, writing the mails, and doing everything I'm going to do just to pay this person? So if it is worth it, why not? And how is it going to worth it if you are going to get more return on that money for yourself than than for the lender? And because that's another trap. Some people borrowed money, but then they are making more money for the lender than they are making more money for themselves. That is not wisdom. But then there's no time to get into all of that. So your debt is someone else's asset. When you owe money, you are someone else's income stream. You need to know that. You need to put that at the back. You are someone else what? Income stream. Understand these dynamics before you get comfortable with unnecessary loans. So be sure that the loan is really worth it before you become somebody else, cash cow, before you become somebody else stream of income, before you become somebody else assets. Before you do what? Before you take that money, put that at the back of your mind and say, is it worth it for me to go the next 3, 6, 9 months, 1 year, work hard only to pay this person back? Is it worth it? And if it's not worth it, if you're not going to make more money on that loan for yourself than for the lender, why? So the 10th point and my final point tonight, I might want to add one or two for faith-based people, but then my time is up. So the 10th one here is financial freedom is not about avoiding debts, but mastering it. So true mastery is when you can use debt strategically, knowing when to borrow, how much to borrow, for what purpose to borrow, and how to exit it, and how to exit the money. That's when debt become your servant, not your master. And then when debt goes wrong, you also need to know how to manage it. So let me go through that again. True mastery is when you can use debt strategically, knowing when to borrow, knowing how to borrow, knowing for what purpose to borrow, and knowing how to exit when it goes bad. That's when debt can be your servant and not your master. So this is the little I can go for tonight. Like I said, everything I've said is just a thought, but then we can adapt this knowledge and experience and discussion to better benefit you more tonight. If I can have real scenario questions, if I can have questions in the chat box that we can address directly and speak directly to. But I want to believe you've learned one or two things tonight. I want to believe you learned one or two things tonight. So if you have any question for me tonight, if you have any comment, please use the chat box. Either you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook. Please, I'll be waiting for a few comments. Use the chat box for your question. If you have any question, any comment, you do not agree with one of the things I've said, or whichever one, just let me hear from you tonight before we call it a day tonight. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Okay, so while I'm waiting for questions or comments, let me add a little bit more thoughts to that. But then, while I'm waiting for few thoughts, let me quickly say this. Um, After this conversation, I am going to release 100 thoughts. I've only shared 10 out of the 100 thoughts on debt. And I'm going to make it available on my seller account. If you want, you can pick it up. But then tonight, I want to share as much as possible, if you will allow. So while I'm waiting for a few more comments, if I don't have any question till 8:45, we're just going to call it a day. I believe you learn one or two things. But till then, let me throw in a few more thoughts. So let me talk about, and this specifically goes to, people of faith, Christians, that, and I understand and appreciate the fact that we want to live our life based on the scriptures and all of that. But then let's look at few thoughts together. Don't be quick to say yes or no. Take your time, ruminate, and think about the things I'm about to say. So the part of the Bible that says lend to many, borrow from none is a promise, not a prohibition of debt. Let me say that again. The part of the scriptures that says, lend to many, borrow from none, is a promise, not a prohibition of the concept of borrowing. So Deuteronomy 28:12 says, is often quoted as a command. It's not a command, but it is actually a part of a blessing. It's a consequence of obedience, not a law forbidding borrowing. So it's about God's desire for His people to rise from a position of to rise to a position of surplus. It is not to shame them when they are in need. So a good number of us are quick to throw the word, "I will lend to nations, I will not borrow." Now, it is the scripture originally, contextually, did not take that as a command. It is a promise that you can walk into. Now, the next thought on that is borrowing is not a sin. It is the mismanagement of it that is a sin. Borrowing itself is not a sin. It is when you mismanage it, that's when you are tending towards, sin. The Bible never condemns borrowing outrightly. It warned against the danger of debt, by saying that, the borrower is servant to lender. Proverbs 22:7. But nowhere does it call debt a sin. If you have anywhere in the Bible that says debt is a sin, please bring it out. Let's discuss it. It's a wisdom issue, not a righteousness issue. So, people in scripture borrowed. And if you are familiar with the story of the of Elisha, Elisha prophet borrowed an axe. That's in Second Kings 2. They borrowed an axe. And that's where when he fell into the water, they said, alas, it was borrowed. And Jesus even borrowed a tomb. I know some people are triggered with that. The early church also shared resources freely. And the sons of the prophet, that the widow of the sons of the prophet that went to Prophet Elisha and said, your servant died, and then he was owing money, and then the lenders have come to take your children, this and that and that. When he told her, go to your house, what do you have? He said, a jar of oil. He said, borrow vessels. And don't borrow in few. So, and then even the early church, also shared resources freely. That's a form of mutual fund. Let's not go into that. And then borrowing based on trust and purpose. So the next one on that is, many faith-based people reject debt, but live in houses, they drive cars and run businesses financed by debt. Some of us that we are employed, the company we are employed to has a lot of debt. They are financed by debt. We live in houses financed by debt. We drive cars financed by debt. We run businesses financed by debt. We are unknowingly benefiting from debt while condemning it. So we said that as a faith person, if you still struggle with debt, let me speak to your heart tonight. Debt is not bad. It is the wisdom to manage it effectively that you need. The issue isn't the borrowing, it is why and how you borrow. So, my fifth thought to faith-based people on debt and borrowing. If you are just joining, I've done 10 thoughts on debt for everyone. Now, while I'm waiting for comment and questions, I'm going through my thoughts on debt for faith-based people, for people that have issue with borrowing. And so I am on the fifth one now. So you can borrow with integrity, but you must repay with discipline. So Psalm 37:21 says, the wicked borrow and does not repay, implying that the sin lies in not repaying, not in the borrowing. You know, this is not Bible study, but I intentionally had to dig into the scriptures so that I can help a few faith people that will allow me help them tonight. Because that might be the difference between where you are today and then what your business will be this time next year. So, not in the act of borrowing itself, but borrow responsibly and they repay faithfully. That is stewardship. My sixth point to faith based people struggling with borrowing: God blessing does not remove the need for planning. Yes, even if you believe God will bless you financially, wisdom demands structure. Jesus said in Luke 14:28, which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the costs? So if you are going to finance a business, if you are going to use other people's money, other people's resources, you need to sit down, plan it, put the mathematics to it, and let the mathematics, let the calculation calculate. You know, let the adding up add up. Don't, like I said, do not go and borrow the money that you will make more money for the lender than for you, the borrower. You must put in your mind that your loan, your debt is another man's asset, and then another man's source of income, cash flow. So you must ask yourself, is it worth it for me to work hard for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or months or years only to be paying this person? Is it worth it? And then the seventh point here will be, kingdom expansion has always involved financial planning, and then sometimes borrowing. The eighth one is, refusing all debt out of fear or spiritual pride can lead to stagnation. That is self-explanatory. The ninth one is, the goal isn't to borrow, but to steward. So the thing in Christendom is stewardship. Either it is your own or it was borrowed, it is about stewardship. Debt is neither good nor bad, it is neutral. The heart and intent behind it and the stewardship after it determine whether it bring bondage or it build, or it bring blessing. And that lastly on that tonight is, Joseph used Pharaoh's resources to prepare for the future. That's leverage. And I know I've spoken so much about leverage. Debt is a form of leverage. Just like every other leverage, it amplifies your gain or it amplifies your pain. So if you use debt appropriately and you get into a good debt, it's going to amplify your wealth. And if you use debt or if you use debt wrongly or you get into a bad debt, it is going to amplify your pain or even crush you. Like I said, before you take it, be sure that it is worth it. Be sure that the rate is worth it. Be sure that that is the cheapest you can get, because your debt is somebody else's asset. And then as you pay back, you have somebody else's cash flow. Be sure that you waking up every day, dressing up, going to work, working hard every day, 2 days, 3, 4, 5 days, month, year is worth it to repay back somebody. So that's how much I'm able to go tonight. So I can see a few comments here and a few questions here. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for joining tonight. And if you have further questions, if you have further things you want us to discuss about, please, you are free to enter my DM and we can have lengthy conversations on it. Like I said, by Monday there will be 100 thought-provoking insights on debt on my seller page for everyone to check and be able to increase their knowledge and then have their decision taken with an informed knowledge, so that you can take an informed decision before you take that loan. And then if you are struggling with a bad debt, how do you get out of it? How do you manage it? Most people, what they do is to ghost the lender, especially if it's not a structured one. Most structured debt does not even need your permission to take their money. But then where the issue is unstructured one, people just ghost their lender. And then this might sound harsh, but this is the wisdom I've learned, in the last few years. If you are going to borrow people that are close to you money and it's not for business, you must be okay that you are either going to lose money or lose the person as a friend or as a close person, or even both. So the issue of money is very touchy, is very private, and is very sensitive. But then being able to utilize wisdom when borrowing or when you are the one lending the money out requires wisdom. So thank you so much for joining tonight. It's 8:45 already, like I promised. Thank you for joining. For everyone that have joined since the beginning, thank you. David Egbobo, I see you. Good evening, my brother. Father, good evening. Bola, I see you. Kehinde, Okeyode, good evening. That should be Alaga Otoposh, if I'm right. Good evening. Bolaji Adisa, good evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining tonight, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.